Welcome back. The Rwandan President Paul Kagame has launched a scathing attack on the international community for failure to stop genocide in his country in 1994. He says the current pockets of conflicts around the world is a reminder that nothing was learned from the 1994 genocide. SABC News international editor Sophie Mokoena joins us now from Kigali, Rwanda. A very good evening to you, Sophie. So let's first start with what President Kagame was saying earlier on. I believe from what you're reporting, he's troubled by the resurgence of hate speech. Are you able to share with us on what he's basing this?
Well, clearly, Tsepiso, the Rwandans are worried about the recent utterances by some of those who used to live in Rwanda who are in other countries. It is for that reason that President Paul Kagame called on the youth in particular to ensure that they don't support any attempts that are aimed at destabilizing the country. Perhaps let's take a listen at what he had to say. Very strong words there, Tsepiso.
The truth of the matter is what has always been said. You can run, but can't hide. There's no hiding place for you from these very facts of our history. So even those who have their time to say whatever they want to say, they will say it. Maybe they do many things based on that as well. But the fact is, they cannot find a place to hide.
Not mincing his words there, Tsepiso, President Paul Kagame talking about those who are trying to destabilize Rwanda, Tsepiso.
Particularly for the international community, you mentioned it, President Kagame also speaking about it, the failure to prevent what was one of the most brutal mass murders in history. Has there been any word from the United Nations, particularly sharing this fear?
Well, today the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, did issue a statement in support of families and victims of the genocide, but also making a commitment that the United Nations in future it will ensure that incidents such as this or tragedies such as this don't repeat itself. But for President Paul Kagame, he had a very, very clear message, very frank, in terms of his views on how the international community conducted themselves or the way countries behaved towards the genocide when many people were calling for help. Let's take a listen what he had to say about the international community, linking it with what is happening currently in the Great Lakes region, particularly in the DRC.
Do you remember? At the time of need, when we needed every help we could get, and everybody, the world, turned their back on us. That's part of the historical facts that Bizimana told us. The world turned its back on us. So that is simple. The message is, you are on your own. So we should learn to be on our own. And I think we have learned enough. If people help, we appreciate. If they don't, we don't have to, all of us, perish just because somebody didn't show up.
Clearly, the Rwandans are still very aggrieved in terms of what transpired in 1994, Tsepiso.
Sophie, you spoke to South Africa's High Commissioner to Rwanda, Mandisi Mphahlwa. I wonder if she expressed any views not only on what President Kagame was saying, particularly given that South Africa is involved in peacekeeping efforts in the DRC and conflicts that involve Rwanda. Our own diplomatic relations suffered when there were assassinations of some Rwandan politicians here in South Africa.
Well, of course, you know that the High Commissioner was the ambassador in Russia, and therefore he was deployed in the area of the Eastern African continent, particularly here as a High Commissioner in Rwanda. And he told me that, yes, there were challenges in terms of the relationship between Pretoria and Kigali, but the relationship is improving. Let's take a listen at what he had to say.
I can say that we have, begun on a path, towards dealing with the challenges that faced us as the two countries, and it is ongoing work. And I'm quite hopeful, optimistic, and positive that in the course of time, this is something that we will refer to as history.
The High Commissioner is quite confident that the relationship will improve, but he also gave an indication that they will continue to work towards ensuring that the two countries are working together. You really will believe when you see perhaps a state visit by President Paul Kagame in South Africa or President Cyril Ramaphosa in Rwanda. And therefore, I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. Tsepiso.
Well, thank you so much, Sophie. And of course, we'll hear more from you, SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena, who's in Kigali, Rwanda, on the anniversary of it's an important event on the regional calendar, the remembrance of 30 years of the 1994 Rwanda genocide.